I mean, just to start off with, can you tell me your name and a little bit about like what you like doing?
Yeah, so my name's Cole. I'm 24 years old, pronouns he, him. I like doing a lot of things. I like music, football, obviously. I do like to watch sport more than play it sometimes, but I did play it before. And I just like to socialise and go out, to be honest. That's pretty much all I do, if I'm honest. Anything that'll get me outside with people is kind of what I do.
You make that sound like not a lot of things at all. I'm like, that's like a full busy life.
Sometimes it doesn't feel like it, because I feel like I need to do it in certain times. So I'll go outside and then I need to like hibernate for a week, and then just not leave my room, and then I'll go outside again, and yeah, so.
I gotcha. Now I'm going to be doing the same when I come
Yeah.
back from this. I'm so
blame
tired.
you.
I think I've met so many really lovely people and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I feel like just talking to people sometimes can be so draining, especially if, say, you're in like the entertainment industry. That's probably the most draining of them all. But yeah.
I'm an artist for reasons.
Yeah.
I really love doing this. Sorry, I'm making this sound like, but no, I genuinely love doing this.
No, that's
Cool. That's really cool to hear. I'm gonna start like at the very, I guess, what we're calling the beginning, or just the very first question, which is like, when did you start playing football and how did you get into it?
So I started playing football, I'd say in primary school, which is kind of what everyone used to do in the playground. Because there's not really much else to do at primary school other than, like, I don't know, play families and mums and dads and things like that. Which is kind of boring. But I used to kind of play football with the boys, and I just enjoyed it. And from then on, I went on to secondary school and played it there.
Is that like, so in primary school it was just like informally running around?
Yeah, kind of aimlessly running around, I'd kind of say, and losing a lot of the balls. And everyone's getting angry because no one's scoring goals, but the goal isn't really clear because there's like 4 jumpers there and you can't really tell what's going on. That's kind of how football was at primary school. But secondary school was more structured, it was actually a team.
I gotcha. Cool. I'll get to secondary school in just a second. I'm just sorry not to be like I'm zeroing in on this thing, but I've been very interested in a lot of people have talked about like there was primary school and there was secondary school and there was a big shift in different kinds of ways. So one thing that I was wondering about was like, so you're saying that was it just boys or were there?
So in primary school it was, I think as we grew up it kind of became more mixed, but in primary school in the playground the boys would mainly play football. And then the girls would go off and play, I don't know, kiss chase or whatever they were doing. And then as we got into like year 6, I think there became like more of a competitiveness between the genders. I don't know what was going on, but the boys wanted to play against the girls, and it was just kind of like very weird. But obviously you'd have the certain girls who didn't want to play, and then you'd have a few girls who did want to play. So they'd split them up equally into both the teams and whatnot. So yeah, that's kind of how it went. Very weird.
I think it's a shame that like you can see kids falling into like gender segregating spaces on their own just because that's like not even when they have to, but just because they're seeing that that's what they're supposed to do or whatever.
Yeah. But I think that also came with when we got older and it came to PE, they would then start to separate us more when people were changing. Before they didn't do it because everyone's little and we'd probably run around in our school uniform, but they started to put the boys outside and the girls inside the classroom. So the boys were getting changed in the hallway, the girls were getting changed in the classroom. And then obviously that created a bit of a segregation, and that kind of, I think because of the environment and what was going on, the way the teachers were doing it and making it really serious, it made all the kids kind of think, let's segregate each other.
Which I guess neatly brings us into secondary school, because I'm assuming that's where it, like, that's where the segregation like was codified or whatever.
Yeah, so for secondary school I went to an all-girls school, so there was no segregation, but the school itself was one massive segregation, because there was the girls' school and then there was actually a boys' school next to it. So it didn't make sense. I mean, you could have just made it into like a massive mixed school, but they didn't want to do that. But yeah, and then that's obviously where I started playing for a team. So that was kind of different in itself. in terms of you could tell who used to play with the boys and who didn't play with the boys and just kind of played with the girls kind of thing. Because there were people who were certainly more serious about playing football, but then there were obviously the people who didn't even want to do PE, so they were just kind of there kind of thing.
So this was like, it was not a voluntary football space, it was more like, you have to do this for PE.
Yeah, sometimes it was do it for PE, so sometimes it would be part of the class. Other times they did actually have a team that would play after school as well, but I was part of both.
Do you remember what the teams were called?
What was that girls' school? That was just, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it didn't have a fancy name, unfortunately.
That's all good. Did you ever get to play like in like proper like matches or school leagues or something like that?
Yeah, so we had like a school league for, I'm pretty sure it was like the whole of Medway. And I remember like we had one specific rival called Fort Pitt, and I think that a lot of people at my school hated Fort Pitt people because they got to have like nicer skirts and their uniform was nicer, so then they just automatically hated it, and also their uniform was pink, so I think for a lot of the girls at my school they didn't like having just like a navy blue uniform. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that.
Not to put that on you, but I assume that you were not looking for the pink uniform.
I was not, no, not at all. And in fact, like with secondary school, I had to wear a skirt all the way until year 11, so that was quite long. But I mean, I got to wear trousers at year 11 when I was leaving, so that didn't help. But you know, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, it's not to go into that. That's interesting to me because I guess I hadn't even thought of that, but obviously British schools also gender their uniforms.
Yeah, yeah.
They have uniforms to begin with, and and they also gender them.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, that's not really relevant. I was just like, oh yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah, I think people forget, because I think a lot of people just go to mixed schools anyway, so they get to automatically wear trousers if they wanted to. But with girls' schools, well, at the time when I was there, it was mainly like you can only wear skirts, unless you're obviously in your PE kit, you can only wear skirts. But yeah, the PE kit was ugly as well, so that didn't help. It's horrible.
Did you play all the way up until you left?
Yeah, I played all the way from year 7 to year 11.
And what was your preferred position?
Striker. Well, I mean, I say striker. If I scored that many goals, that's something that's completely different. But I like to say striker because it sounds cooler. And also, strikers are the people that get the goals, so you might as well just say you're a striker. But I was put a lot of the time in like midfield. Why? I don't know, because that meant I have to go up and down the pitch way too much. I just like to kind of stay on the edge, and when the ball comes, do you know what I mean? But yeah, striker, and I'd say centre forward more than anything, because that kind of covers it all. But yeah, striker.
Get glory.
Yeah. I loved scoring goals. I mean, when I did, but I just enjoyed doing it. And I kind of enjoyed feeling like I had more power in the game to be able to actually make a difference. Obviously every position makes a difference, but obviously if you win by goals, that's the aim of the game, so I guess, yeah, that's probably why I liked it.
Since then, have you played?
No. Since then, I haven't played. I think mainly because when I went to sixth form, it was mixed. So having a football team, or even trying to organise having any kind of football team, just didn't really help, or didn't make sense, didn't really go the way it should have. And then by the time they'd actually kind of wanted to have a boys team anyway, we had already left kind of thing, so it was already the end of the school year for me. But I'd come out in sixth form as well, so I would have been part of that boys team, but it was just hard to organise that.
Did you come out as a trans guy? Sorry, we're not going to go too much into that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Stuff, but you came out in sixth form?
Yeah, so I came out at the end of year 12. They were doing head boy, head girl elections, so I said I'm going for head boy, and then kind of just explained it in front of everyone. I cried a little bit, and then I had to go back up again and try not to cry. But yeah, I mean, I got head boy, which was great, but obviously when you first come out, there's that stigma around everything that you do. And obviously being a head boy in a sixth form that is part of an all-girls school, but also now has boys mixed into the sixth form, and then having to try and manage those boys who aren't part of that school at all, so they're part of outside schools, was like, I can imagine what it was like being a teacher. Awful. Terrible.
No, talk about a bunch of people being like, can we have a football team, please?
Yeah. And then obviously trying to organise that as a trans man who has just come out as well. So I wasn't, I didn't go through transitioning or anything like that, I just socially come out. Was just even harder because the boys probably wouldn't listen to me if I tried to organise a boys team. And then tried to be on the boys team. I feel like that wouldn't have worked very well.
Yeah, no, it makes sense that the RIPs had already actually been a football team, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was actually a girls' football team there because obviously they'd kind of carried it on from the fact that it was an all-girls school there anyway. But then obviously when the boys came in, they were like, well, you've got a girls' team, why isn't there a boys' team? But that was when I was already in year 13 and ready to pack up and leave. So yeah, they kind of trying to set that up just wasn't working. I think it was more of a thing where if they wanted a boys team, they'd have to just meet up and do it themselves, which I don't really think that counts as a team. I think that's just friends playing football.
It's actually the opposite problem of like pretty much everybody else that I've talked with, because it's usually been like there were like a lot of the people I've talked with were like, yeah, I would have been okay with being on a women's team, but there were literally just no teams at all.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's interesting hearing like just the complete opposite problem happening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did actually say like I would be on the women's team, and I remember them saying no because I had come out. But then I thought, it's just like what team am I supposed to be on? There wasn't really there for the boys team. There wouldn't have been a comfortable space for me to play with them. And on the girls team, the way they saw it, some people are quite narrow-minded in Kent, so the way they would have seen it would have been, but you've just come out as a boy, so why would you play on that team? Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
I mean, I know what you're saying, but I don't know what they mean.
No. Yeah. It just didn't make sense.
Alright. So, as an adult, which you said you're 24 now, so it's been, I'm very, very bad at maths. 6 years?
Yeah, 6 years around that.
Cool. Is that like you've found other things to take at the time, or you would really like to find a team but you're not really sure where to start looking, or like is it more of like I've left football behind a little bit, or is it like I would actually really like to play but the access barriers aren't looking great?
Yeah, I think for me and a lot of people who are non-binary or trans, finding a team that actually caters to you and understands what you're going through, that is just a one-gendered team wouldn't work. It would have to be, we'd have to create our own teams. And I know there are maybe a few teams out there, but I don't know if the amount of teams that are out there is enough to have like a league and things like that for it to be like not even a professional team, but just a team where you can actually play against other people and play against other teams and do home and away and have a kit and all of this stuff. I know there are a few that are out there, but they're not, from what I've heard, like the ones that you'd want to, they're not like Premier League kind of, do you know what I mean? And I think, not that I'm at Premier League level or anything, but I think it would be nice to have that option. It's not something I've left behind. I mean, if there was a team out there, I would definitely train with them and play with them, but it's about having that, because it seems like a family, so it's like kind of having that space where you feel safe to train and get changed and do all of these things with the team and bond with the team, and I think that's kind of what's lacking at the minute.
Just for you, ideally, what kind of team would you want to play on? I know you just say trans team, but like both in terms of skill level, like would it be like 5-a-side, 7-a-side, 11-a-side, and also like I guess what kind of no, actually we'll start there and then I'll ask a follow-up question to that. Like what kind of team is it that you would be like, this is the team I'll play on?
So I only played 11-a-side. But even if there was like a 5-a-side team, I wouldn't mind doing that. I just think that's like, I think 11-a-side is the kind of traditional football that people know. So I think that would be like the starting point if there was more teams out there to actually get this going and actually work for people. But also in terms of like the team that I'd want to play on, I think at this point I'd want an all-trans team. I just think that would make sense. I think or a boys team that would allow trans people on it. Do you know what I mean? Because the way sports is at the minute and the conversations around sports and the conversations around trans people in sport, it doesn't really align with how trans people would want to be perceived in sport at all. It just doesn't make sense. 2 and 2 makes 4, but at the minute it's making 10. I don't understand. So I think it would have to be an all-trans team, just for the purpose of being comfortable. And also, I don't feel like I'd be comfortable playing with an all-boys team and being the only trans person on it. I feel like we'd have to have more than one trans person on the team. But then obviously the questions arise about, you know, whether you have to declare that that person's trans on your team and all of these different things. So I think it just makes it more complicated for everyone. But I mean, it wouldn't be complicated if there wasn't a problem with it.
They weren't making such a fucking fuss.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think like the thing about a trans team as well is that it's kind of like you bypass a lot of the stuff that like, because I think it's this like I think cis men could probably and there are cis men who are doing the work.
Yeah.
But like one has to take that risk every time.
Yeah, there should be more, really. But I think a lot of it comes down to what people perceive as masculinity and how fragile the masculinity is for a lot of cis men, especially just in normal football. I mean, just look at like how they play in the Premier League and all of those leagues. Like, it's a very fragile, sensitive topic for a lot of cis men for some reason. And I think then there would be this whole, but you're on testosterone, you know, I've naturally got it, and this whole battle with how testosterone can change things and whether that would make you better in skill or not. It's just like, but for me, the way sports should be is that if you're at a certain skill level, you play with people in that certain skill level. Because I don't understand why you wouldn't think sports is about the skill and why it's about gender. It just doesn't make much sense to me. That's all.
It's very difficult as well because I feel like a lot of the conversations that I'm having, I try also really hard not to insert myself too much, but I also occasionally will just be like, yes, no, it doesn't make any fucking sense. Yeah. Like, I will just get really, really like we're having to try and figure out what a completely different conversation is, because anything that's being talked about by like mainstream cisgender spaces is just so far away from what should be talked about. Yeah. That you're kind of like, I don't even want to have it, like, it's not even a discourse, because all I want to say is like, you're wrong, and now let's get back to what we should actually be talking about, like what actually matters.
Yeah.
Like,
I feel like the conversation should be more, how do we, instead of separate them, integrate them into sports so that everyone feels comfortable playing sports regardless. But I think it's more, they're just so they're trying to base things on the science, which doesn't make sense, because I mean, even if you look at, say for example, UFC or boxing, it's done by weight. So if you were a certain weight, you go against people who are also that certain weight. And that should be the same as football. If you are a Premier League team or that kind of level, you should play people who are at that level. That just is how it should be done. That's how sports is. You train to gain the skills. And if you're good at it, then you know you're good at it, and if you're not, then you're not. That's just how it should be. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, there are quite a lot of, I say a lot, comparative to maybe even 5 years ago, there's more of like smaller leagues that are popping up, anecdotally as well, and also a lot of the people that I've talked with, where it's like 5-a-side leagues that are popping up that are, I think, trying to navigate. One, they're trying to navigate the fact that a lot of them are built in women's spaces, because women's football is a slightly different space than men's football.
Yeah, slightly.
And being like, all right, well, we're actually trying to be more inclusive now, but then I think a lot of us can't really get comfortable with like women and non-binary. It's like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to speak for you, obviously, but it I'm like, no.
Yeah, I think if it was in a women's space, I wouldn't feel comfortable, purely because I've come from that space. I've come from that space to move into a different space, so going back there would be like going backwards for me, kind of thing. And also, I don't think it would just align with me in general, because, you know, like I said, that I played for an all-girls secondary school team, but that was still slightly uncomfortable in a way while I was there, because I was just like, well, something's wrong here. But yeah, I think in both sides there's a discomfort in playing with either. I mean, one of my friends actually plays rugby, and they have like a non-binary team, but also I think it's also more, it was created in a women's space, but of course you can have non-binary people on their team, and they've said to me, you know, oh, you should join our team, but I still feel like the way the space was created wasn't created for me. Do you know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, no, I really do. Yeah. Sort of as a follow-up to a little bit of like what we've generally been talking about as well. Like what, like in the sense that this is something that hopefully would come quite naturally to a trans space that was thinking also like intersectionally. Like what is it that you would want from a space in terms of like in terms of like what do you think that people need to, even if it was not like a trans team, because I think with a trans team I'm hoping that they understand these things, but like maybe in a team, let's say a men's team that habitually has been cis men, and they're like, why is it that we're not getting more like trans guys on this team? What is it that we're doing wrong? Like if they were really thinking about it, what do you think that they would need to work on in order to be an actually inclusive space?
I think the main thing is just declaring that you want trans people on your team, because so many teams are so silent about it, which is why no one knows whether there are teams out there that they can join. And unless you're on the team, you're not going to know whether trans people can join it, which happens a lot in football. I feel like maybe they're scared to say that they have or allow trans people in their space, because of the whole stigma that comes with the league that they're in, and then how would that affect the players, and it's just kind of like a knock-on effect. But I think also educating yourself on trans matters and being up to date with what's happening in the world at the minute. There's more than enough things on Google you can kind of research, but you know, trans people shouldn't have to take that upon themselves to then tell you what's going on in our world when it's pretty much on the news all the time. And also I think if you have a space where you want more trans people in there, I think bringing yourself to spaces where trans people go as an ally would help, because I mean it's all through word of mouth these days. No one really knows anything about a lot of teams, and there's probably loads of teams out there who would allow trans people to play, but we don't know it because they've never come to our spaces, they've never seen how we act as a community, they've never really put themselves in our shoes, they've never understood what we go through. They've never researched it. So there's loads of things that they need to do before they even allow a trans person in their space or even think about opening themselves up to that. I think a massive thing for trans people is the kit and how it fits and just feeling comfortable in it. I feel like clothing for trans people is just a massive thing, obviously, especially if you're wearing a binder. It needs to be something where it's not, too tight or too constricted in this, that and the other. And obviously if you're a team that was created in a men's space, you're not too worried about the kit. You don't really care, they'll just wear anything. But it needs to be something that will cater to everyone so that there is no kind of dysphoria on the day of match day or training days and whatnot. So yeah, I think that's a massive one, definitely. But that comes after educating yourself and putting yourself in the spaces.
That's going to come with it.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of all that, actually, I don't know if you've heard about recently, there was a match that was played on Trans Day of Visibility. It was basically, so Truck FC, it's trans radio, is basically I guess it's a club now that was created by a trans woman. That originally was focusing a little bit on trans women, but was focusing on trans inclusivity. And then this year, basically was like, oh, we could do like a match that's which includes one team that's cis guys and one team that's trans mas guys, or trans mas people, trans guys and trans mas people. Yeah, across the board. Yeah. And basically they put out a call out and we're like, yeah, we'll probably get enough to put together a team, and they had overwhelming responses from across the country. There was one person that I was talking to in October last year, actually. I was doing a proof of concept and he very willingly was very nicely yeah, you can come to me, because he lives in Leeds as well. And he came down from Leeds to be in this match. So it was all over the place, and they've now started a Slack, which I also need to get on. There's a lot I need to do, which basically is gauging the interest for transmas teams across the country. And I was told yesterday that there's 250 people on it already.
Doesn't surprise me at all. That's a whole league in itself, maybe two. I think that's great. I think that's the best thing I've ever heard. Because there's been such a gap in all kinds of sports for any kind of. I feel like maybe just as trans people, we should just create our own leagues now, because I feel like this is something that we're never going to be able to get over. I feel like it's something that a lot of cis people will never be able to get over, which will just cause a lot of this, what we have going on already. But then again, we wouldn't want to segregate ourselves, so it's kind of what do we do? But I think having a league of our own solves the problem massively, 100%. And then when people see that, we're probably better than them, maybe they might open their spaces and be open to the idea of having trans people on their team, which more likely will happen because people like their teams to win. So,
yeah, the problem with segregation is because that's not really why women's football was created in this. Well, kind of, but women's football was obviously in the same way that old women's sport was kind of no, you can't play because you're not as good, and also ladies should not be I don't know whatever they were saying. Whatever they still say. And so it's oh yeah, great. It makes sense to then have women's sports spaces, and then to also support them getting actual fucking funding. But at the same time, there's also all right, what is perhaps an ideal, because staying safe is really important. But then at the same time, it's I think trans people exist in quite nebulous spaces in terms of potentially, like, I think for some people it's probably very simple. Like, I've talked to some people and they were like, oh, I'm grand with the lesbian team and that's all I need.
Yeah.
But like, I think for a lot of us, there's potentially like, oh yeah, no, it'd be nice to be on like just like a men's team that was inclusive.
Yeah.
But then also this option. So, ramble to get to like, in like, let's say 50 years, if things were to say just get just better, like 50 years of just good news. Imagine, what do you think would be like your like concept of an ideal future for football inclusivity? Like, would it be lots of different kinds of leagues, lots of different kinds of teams, or would it be like all mixed gender? Or
I think it's a hard question, because I feel like every option should be considered, but because of the way things are now, I think just to have like a trans team and a trans league just makes sense until, because it's definitely going to take longer than 50 years for people to understand. But I mean, best case scenario is that I would say everyone plays sports together, but I know that would just be so hard to do, especially when it comes to like combat sports and things like that as well. It would just be insane. But I think when it's not a non-contact sport like football or tennis, yes, everyone should just play together. That should have been a no-brainer regardless. But also then there comes the whole pay gap between men and women's football, and yeah, that would then cause more problems. So okay, in 50 years, I keep going back to this. In 50 years' time, just have a trans league. I think that would just solve the problem for a little bit, until we figure out everything else, because that's a lot to figure out.
You're all good. Don't worry, I wasn't putting it like, all right, now you're gonna give me the right answer. We're gonna send it to the FA, and they're gonna
see what they say.
See what they say to that. Don't worry. I just like, yeah, it's when they constantly focus on. I'm air quoting so hard on science because their science is very flawed.
Yeah.
Like when they over focus on that element of it, then we can't ask any, like we can't posit any of these solutions. We can't ask any of these questions because they're constantly being like, no. If we just find the exact like I don't know, like chemical level of testosterone that completely like puts woman on one side and man on the other, and then we've sorted it.
Yeah.
And that's the real solutions. Like so yeah. So don't worry, I'm not like putting you on the spot with that answer or anything like that. I just was interested. And I mean, like, potentially a trans league could become possible in the future because.
Like 100%. I don't see why there wouldn't be one, to be honest. But I feel like it should be called like a mask league, and a mask league and a fem league, because I feel like that would incorporate every person in the whole of the LGBT anyway, and then that way it's not too segregated. That way gender doesn't really come into it, which kind of is how it should have been anyway, but you know.
They've already solved the gender issues, so now we just got to try and work with what we've got.
Yeah, I mean, especially because we know it's hard to do. We already know it's a hard problem to solve ourselves. So it's not like we're disagreeing, we just know that the points that you're making are dumb. Yeah.
Maybe you're just not that smart.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know about your science degree or anything, but maybe you should.
I used to do judo because my mum's a black belt, and so she was like, well, my kids are going to do judo and they'll love it, and I hate it.
Yeah, my mum did that with karate, and I was like, why would I? Like, what?
Okay, I'm glad that we're like basically same mum, different.
I understand.
My first year at a tournament, because judo at the time was not big in Denmark.
Yeah.
And there was nobody in my weight at all at this tournament. I ended up fighting just like cis boys who were 10 kilos heavier than me, and I lost every single match, like every single fight. And then they like gave me a gold medal at the end anyway because I technically was the winner of my weight group, and it was just the most humiliating. Like it was, I don't know what it is, like opposite participation trophy or something.
Yeah,
where it's
that's
just
crazy.
like, it's okay.
Just have one anyway. It's okay.
Yeah, you took like
You took
5
part.
really good beatings. Well done. You got thrown around like a rag doll for about
That's
5
crazy.
hours. Well done.
I mean, at least you got a medal. Don't tell anyone what it's for. Just say you won.
I'm just so good at you. I'm really.
Say you're a black belt.
I'm gonna say that one time, and somebody's gonna be like, "Oh, great, we could like spar sometime," and I'll be like, "Oh dear."
Yeah. I don't know about that. I've got to go home.
It's okay. Cool. Sorry, I talked just into a different space right now. Just this is kind of vague, so you can answer it much of what you want. But like, what is it that you like about football?
I kind of like, because I support Arsenal, which, you know, anyone who supports Arsenal is clearly a very loyal person, because I don't know what's wrong with us. But I mean, we could win the league. Do you know how long it's been? It's so long. I'm so excited. Oh my god, we can't lose, because I'll actually cry. But I support Arsenal, and that, in a sense, feels like having a random family of people. It's kind of like a community of people, the Arsenal supporters, and then everyone else, you know. But I mean, having a team that you play for instead of just a team you support is different, because you're with them a lot of the time. You're training with them. You have a mutual understanding. You need to have some sort of chemistry with the players in order for the match to just go well in general. And it's kind of like, it's similar to how the trans community is, where everyone doesn't know each other but knows of each other, or has been around each other and is welcoming. Do you know what I mean? And there's that mutual understanding, and that's kind of what I like about football, because there's that just sense of family. Like it's your club. Do you know what I mean? It's your team. But that's definitely what I like. And then obviously scoring the goals. Not so much when we lose, but you know, love winning.
Yeah, I guess go out and have something to eat, so I drink afterwards anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you'll cry into your burger instead of smile, but you know, it's okay.
I mean, you're an Arsenal fan, so...
Yeah, a lot of crying over the last few years, yeah. But I mean, I really think we could win. This might be the first time since, I think, like 2006, since we've won the league. But my brother was 2 then, so he didn't remember. And now he's 18, he's really rooting for Arsenal. It would just be great if, in his lifetime, we'd win something, you know?
He's got a lot of lifetime left.
Oh, yeah, he's 18, he's got the world ahead of him. Not sure how long Arsenal have got, but, you know.
Ouch.
Yeah.
I guess, okay, what is it that you like about watching football?
Watching football? The atmosphere, definitely. It's kind of like when you watch a play, you either want to laugh or you cry. Mainly cry, Arsenal of course. But I just like the atmosphere. Obviously, I've gone to see games and whatnot, and I've saw Terry Henry play before he quit football, and I don't know what he does now, commentates on TV really. Yeah, real life, and it was really great to see him play. And I think the legacy that people leave behind when they have played football for a while and actually getting to watch them play is kind of like when you see like your favourite artist, or when you see your favourite movie. It's the same kind of feeling. It's just excitement, and you kind of feel sad, but like also you realise that just a football player, you need to be for real a little bit. But it's still great. I just love watching it. The atmosphere, the people. Well, maybe not the people sometimes, but the crowds.
In theory.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's also something that we could talk about a little bit, which is like, oh god, I also want to pick up on the theatricality. Like, just because you said that, and I was like, yeah, that's what I'm always saying. It's like watching a play.
It is. Yeah.
You just don't know how it ends until it's ended.
Until it's ended. Yeah.
I think also not to be a nerd for a second, but like, no, I really love Star Trek, and I always think back to the main character in Deep Space Nine, Benjamin Sisko, had this wonderful speech about baseball where he was talking about linear time and how we create stories through sports, and I was just
it's true. It is true. Yeah, and I mean also, you know, when you watch like a advert for football and there's a little kid in the crowd, it's just so cute, because that's probably their first game, or you know, they've been a fan of this club for ages, and it's something that's been passed down through the family, and everyone supports that team, and yeah, I just love it. It's just so great it's just great to watch. I mean, obviously when you win it.
Obviously when you're winning.
Only when you're winning, really.
Although like I don't know, I often watch matches, like if I'm in a pub or something, there's a match playing, I'll be like, alright, who's losing? Great, you're my team for the day.
Always the underdog when it's not your team. Yeah, love that. Who do you support?
So this is just because I watched Bend It Like Beckham when I was a very formative age. That's literally the only reason that I support Manchester United, which is like...
That's fair enough.
I feel kind of guilty about it, because I'm like, yeah, well, you know...
There's no other reason, really, but that's understandable. I mean, I feel like a lot of countries all over the world just automatically support Man United. I don't know why, but everyone just says Man United, and it makes no sense. But they're still like one of the biggest teams out there, and they're known for Alex Ferguson and David Beckham and Cristiano Ronaldo and all of these big players, Wayne Rooney and all the players like that. So
little guy. Yeah, I'm kind of hoping. I'm thinking if I stay in Leeds for long enough, I'm gonna check out like Leeds, because I don't think I've ever actually seen Leeds play.
Yeah, not many people have. I don't think.
I'm about to get involved with like a real underdog.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, I've got, where I live, there's a team called Gillingham FC. I think they're in the Championship. But yeah, I've never seen them play, not once. I've lived in Kent since I was like 10. I've never seen them play. I should probably go and watch them play, but the disappointment that comes with the losing, especially of a team of an area that I live in, oh gosh, that's awful.
Because we've been talking a little bit about like, that there's a false conversation happening. Well, there's some bullshit being said over here.
Yeah.
That is sort of irrelevant to a lot of the questions that actually have to happen, both in terms of like trans inclusivity, but also just like the actual issues that exist in football, which is like the actual like misogyny and racism and access barriers that exist in football that are like that is like no, let's instead just talk about the mythical trans woman who's gonna come and I don't know, do something. So on the flip side, and then also a little bit what you were mentioning just very shortly about like, you know, the crowds are great when they're great. But like in that sense, what with all of that happening and sort of the culture, the sort of less good culture that surrounds football, what do you think that like trans people potentially, and also I think we're kind of beginning to sort of embody it as well, what we can actually like add to that space, like why it is that actually they should be fucking like welcoming us with open arms.
Yeah, I think due to how everything in the world is at the minute, I think just being a part of that space adds to it. And it's I think it's as simple as that really, because I feel like you can't really put into words how as trans people we are with each other. It's not really something that can even be described. Like it's like a family, yes it's like a community, but when you're in that space you kind of see how wholesome it is. And obviously it wouldn't just be just trans people going to watch trans football, it'd be everyone. Not necessarily certain types of people, but it would be, you know, more. It would be the same as a normal football match. Do you know what I mean? I don't feel like there would be anything bad about it. I feel like it would just be more wholesome, because we wouldn't have like the Millwall fans and people like that ruining the time that we have, because we're we're there to play sport, do you know what I mean? We're there to have fun, we're there to support people, we're there to just play football. Yeah.
No, you're all good. You're so
Yeah,
right.
I just feel like having transport adds to any sport. Do you know what I mean? It's just about inclusivity. Simple as that.
I like to think. I know that like not everything is like one doesn't become a better person because one is part of a marginalized group of people. But I do, like, in my idealized optimistic self,
Yeah.
I do hope that it means that there's the potential for more like of these kinds of conversations in a wider sense. So not like, for me, for example, not just thinking about myself, but also thinking about like, all right, like, what's it like being black and trans, like, so, because it's not just about making a space trans inclusive, it's about making it inclusive.
Yeah, period. Like, it should just be inclusive as a whole.
Oh, also I wanted to mention as well, this was about the match that I talked about, the one with like transmasculine people versus the cis guys team, and they did lose, but in their defense it was like, we're pulling together people from across the country who've never played together before, at like very different levels. So I was like, but they did score a goal, so we're all good.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I was like, I'm alright with that. The guy who was captaining the team, I spoke with him yesterday, and he was actually like, just in terms of clothes, he'd like gotten a fair few people writing to him and been like, hey, so like, what happens if our packers fall out? And he was like, just, you gotta buy, like, you gotta get like tighter pants. And apparently that like went out on like Twitter, and everybody was like writing to him like, thank you, we would have forgotten otherwise. Like, I don't think you get that in
Yeah, you don't get that.
like, that's, I don't know if that's like what the like predominantly cis men spaces need to like specifically be telling people, because I think we know, but like just, I think these are things that they would just never even
think of. Yeah, that's why I said about the kit, because that's just such an important element for trans people, feeling comfortable in the clothes that we're wearing. So if I'm going to be running around sweaty for 90 minutes, I don't want to be in something that's tight and constricting and loose on the bottom and my packer's falling out, but then also my binder's showing, and it's just it just feels like a mess. And I want to purposely be injured so I can come off, do you know what I mean? I want to stay on the pitch and be comfortable.
Would you be looking for something? And also, I don't know enough about Kent, so like, how possible do you think that it is that a team like that could be built in Kent? Like, what is
Impossible.
Okay.
Impossible. I don't think, because of the kind of area that Kent is, I don't think, A, that anyone would even think of doing it, but B, that there would be enough people comfortable in a place like that where it's so small-minded and everyone's quite just tunnel vision with their ways, to have a team that's even inclusive enough to even do that. There are probably teams out there who are inclusive and who maybe would consider having trans people in their team, but they don't know enough to be able to cater to you for you to be comfortable being on that team. So it wouldn't be possible. Impossible in Kent, but I think in a bigger area like London, definitely possible. Definitely better to do than in Kent, 100%. More comfortable. Because London's a lot more open, and the people you see around here are more themselves, especially even just in the way they dress. It's completely different to like living in a small town. But yeah.
If there was like a men's football team that, I don't know, I don't know why I'm like, now that you've described Kent in this way, I'm like, they don't have social media, they hand out flyers. I'm like, no, Kent is also in the 21st century. Social media.
We still have like a guy who drives down the road on a horse. But like, yeah, we've got cars and stuff, you know, and internet. It's not good, but I mean, we use candles, a lot of those.
No, but like, just like, if there were like a men's team that were in Kent to be like, hey, we really want like trans guys to join our team, would you feel comfortable enough to like check it out, or would you just be like, nah, no, like I'm gonna hold out for like?
I feel like because I live in Kent, so I know what people there are like, I'd be apprehensive, but I would still check it out, because I know that there are a fair few people in Kent who are obviously around my age who are more open to trans people because they know of me or they know someone who's trans or they're just in the right generation, I guess. But would I join it? I don't know. It just would depend on who's there and what they're like. Because obviously you get the kind of people in Kent who are interested, and they're interested in the right way, and they try to ask questions. Whether they word them right, completely different story. Whether you want to answer them or not is up to you. But there are obviously the certain people in Kent who are the complete opposite of that, and maybe they want to know, but in more of a small-minded way, where they want to know to make fun of or to just not try and understand and question everything. So I think it more depends on the type of people who would be on that team.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, and also like it kind of sucks having to be the first person, like the person who has to go in and explain everything and do all the work. It's like, I'm just here to play football. Or football in this case is a microcosm. Like it could be anything. You're like, I'm just.
It's like when you join a workplace and you're the only person who's trans there, or the first person who's ever been trans there, and then you've got this whole. It's like doing a presentation to everyone every single second of the day of how things work, and if something happens on the news, they're like, "Oh, did you hear about this?" Well, yes, of course I heard about this. What do you mean? Did you hear about it? Is more the question, but
I think what's interesting as well about these conversations as well is like, I think. Like there's obviously been a lot of overlap, but I think no two answers have been exactly the same to that question. So I'm like, okay, so the answer seems to be like we need lots and lots of different options. But yeah, I would kill for a trans league. That would be
so cool. That'd be so cool, and it'd be on TV as well.
It would be on TV, like it was getting funding, and
it would have to be funded. They'd have to fund it the same way they fund the women's team, because otherwise that would just.
Otherwise we're like, we're looking at you. There's also a part of me, this is maybe slightly like, I don't know, utopian or something, that's like, what if we just like, everybody also like in solidarity, we're like, what if we just don't do the FA anymore? And we just like step out of that and build all of our own spaces. Do you have a anecdote that's just like, something cool or interesting or informative or something that in some way sticks with you that you'd be up for sharing about football? Yeah, either playing or watching, either one is...
Oh, I think, okay, yes, I've got one. So I once went on a tour around Wembley Stadium, which was cool. I mean, it's Wembley Stadium. But we didn't expect to see anyone there, and on the day that we went, we actually saw Theo Walcott and Jack Wilshere, who were playing for Arsenal at the time. And yeah, it was probably the best thing ever. I was so happy because obviously you don't expect to go on a tour and actually see people there, but we saw them there and they went out training and they were doing whatever they were doing, and it was really cool. But yeah, and I also met Jermaine Defoe at a award ceremony that I went to recently, and he was just there. I mean, but so was Naomi Campbell, so it was just like everyone was there. But yeah, I've seen quite a few footballers just around randomly. I haven't seen Cristiano Ronaldo yet though, but
in Kent.
In Kent, no, I don't think I would. I've never seen any of them in Kent, so that says it all. But yeah, no.
Yeah, just why do you think other queer and trans people should get into football, either playing or as supporters?
I think I don't know. I feel like when you play a sport, it's kind of like just learning a new skill, and I feel like everyone should at least like have played one sport to understand why people play sport and why we're trying to fight the corner that we're fighting right now. I feel like also when you play sport you become a part of, like I've said before, like a community, and it's kind of nice to be able to socialise with people that you're always playing sports with. So yeah, definitely I think everyone should get into, even just watching football, the atmosphere itself is, like I said before, like a play, which is just really interesting to see how people react when they lose and when they win. Not everyone reacts the same, just to let you know. But it is fun. It is nice to just leave the house and support something or be passionate about doing something. Just like some people are passionate about art, people are passionate about sport. And I'm passionate about Arsenal winning the league this year. So
wish it for you so much.
I think everyone's hoping for something. Honestly, as long as we just do what, or maybe don't do what we're doing. We drew the last 2 games, so we missed out on 4 extra points. But I just don't want Man City to win. That's it.
I think actually we can agree on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really into losing. I don't know what. I can't tell you what that is. Like, I'm really into watching a team and being like, hell yeah, they're gonna lose. We showed up, we did our best, and we sucked. I can't tell you what that's about.
I love an underdog. I mean, not when it's my team, but
Theory.
Yeah.
If I ever play a match, you should come and support and just be like, I hope you lose!
Yes, losing! And people will be like, what? It'll be like their home stadium, and it'll be like, losing, and it'll be like, get out.
So right, this person's just very strange, don't worry.
Don't do that when you watch Leeds.
No.
Please don't do that when you watch Leeds.
When I watch Leeds, I promise. The stadium's really not far from where I live as well, so I'm kind of like, I could just take a bus and just go to a fucking match. Just to see what it's like. I haven't been in a stadium for years. Like, I've been watching on TV all the time, so I'm kind of like, I really want to get back in the atmosphere.
But you've got to do it when it's summer though.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not going to.
Sometimes standing in the cold is just never worth it, especially when you're losing. It's just like, oh my god, I just spent a tenner on a burger and £10 on like a bottle of water, and now we're losing. And I'm cold.
I'm cold.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you really, you're like, oh, I wish we'd gotten into this subject, or I wish I could have been able to talk a little bit about this, or just something that you think people ought to know, either about yourself or about the bigger questions that we've been? The answer can be no, by the way.
No, I don't think there is. I think I covered pretty much everything that I could think of saying. But it would just be nice to have a trans league. I think that's the main point. I think just having a league and having a team where you can train with them, because obviously a lot of trans people probably haven't played football in a long time because we kind of can't. But being able to train with people and be around people who are in your own community and feeling the same way as you, probably understanding why you're feeling that way as well, helps. It's just nice to do that.
Yeah.
I've been planning to start up for years, and I'm just like, but I think for me the main thing is having a team that I'm comfortable training with, because they're going to see you when you miss the ball. They're going to see you when you don't get the goal. They're going to see you when you fall on your face and fall over the ball. They're going to see you probably at your worst, and that for me means more than just having a team, and I prefer that. So yeah.
God, I'm just with everything that I was saying about losing as well. I'm also just I really get in my head a lot about being like, oh no, if I make a mistake, then everyone's gonna hate me.
Yeah.
Which isn't even a trans thing. It's just being I just don't want to let people down.
Yeah. But I think if you're with people you're comfortable with and you're comfortable training with them, then when you make those mistakes, it's like nothing. And also we're all probably going to be as bad as each other unless we still play football. So, which not many of us do. So it's going to be a lot of training days. Yeah.
Can't keep us down. We're going to get back into football whether you want us there or not.
Yeah.
Alright. Yeah, I will call it. I'm looking for a different word than call it, because I don't know why it makes me feel like...
That's a wrap.